All right, what else you got? You know, I'll tell you, here's one thing, though. I've got to say, without fear of contradiction, that is another thing that is missing. Not only the impact of it, but also the pleasure, the fun of the whole thing is missing of candid photography, especially as it relates to the wrestling business. Now that they got the fucking phones and you can take a picture anywhere, you don't have to have it developed. You can send it anywhere. You can broadcast it all over the world. My God, imagine if that had been able to happen in the 70s and 80s in the wrestling business. But it used to be that, first of all, you had to find your willing pigeon. And of course, there were, back in those days, before we ruined the atmosphere, there were millions of willing pigeons around the wrestling business. But then you had to have somewhat professional equipment because Polaroids just did. Some guys like Polaroids, but no. You had to have some professional equipment. Then you got to have a place to fucking develop them. So you've got to establish that fucking relationship. And then you've got to have a way of displaying them nicely while at the same time not just fucking, keeping them around willy-nilly where anybody could fucking find them. And it was a nice little fucking hobby.
How do you display them nicely?
Well, in an album or something, of that nature. As a matter of fact, Stan, God damn it, Stan won't get mad at me at this point. But way before Stan met the love of his life and was married and lives happily ever after in that fashion, the Gangster of Love had an amazing multiple volume photo album collection of many of the friends that he had made in the wrestling business. And one fucking night in Charlotte, I don't know why, he had heard or read something on TV, because I've told you Stan was a little police phobic. He would never make a U-turn. He would drive 2 miles down the road out of his way to not make an illegal U-turn when we were lost and late to the building. In some cases, I felt like he thought that there was a satellite launched by the United States government with the intention of just keeping an eye on Stan Lane, waiting for him to fuck up. One time we were trying to find the Orange Bowl in Miami for the 87 Great American Bash, and he's the one that fucking lived in Florida, and we're lost as fucking a ball in high weeds, and he's got to piss. And we're not in a good neighborhood of Miami. So he pulls behind his fucking shutdown business, and he says, "You watch for the cops." And he fucking opens the door, and he's got shorts on anyway, so he just puts his feet out, and he just kind of pulls the shorts aside. He's not all the way out, and he's fucking pissing. And right as he gets about midstream, I go, "Shit, there's a cop." And he fucking jumps back in the fucking, puts his feet back in the fucking car and slams the door, and the only thing he forgot to do was stop pissing. And oh boy, he was pissed. He was pissed about that. But anyway, Stan one night in Charlotte, he had seen some news story, or he heard some story, whatever. And he, in his mind, even though he was a careful young man that all checked IDs, he was convinced that some of those photos may have looked like that those young ladies were underage, and he tossed them all. I was like, "Fuck, you could have given them to me." He said, "Well, I didn't want anybody to think, I said, "Well, what were they? Was somebody going to get a fucking warrant to come and look at your personal porn stash and knock on your doors and come on, Lane, show us the goods? What the fuck?" He's the one guy in wrestling and never does anything wrong except punch that one guy's fucking face in. But anyway, I digress. So that's another thing that is not as fun as it used to be, is having the belts as props and doing some candid photography and having a nice collection that you could enjoy in years to come. But I'll tell you one thing. One thing has improved. As I sometimes go back and look at photographs from the 70s, 80s even, and I see photographs of today, hygiene is so much better on both parties, the male and the female, because we didn't used to think about manscaping back then. And every once in a while, if you found somebody with a landing strip, you're like, "Holy wow, she's wild." But that was about as far as it got. Well, one time I knew one girl that used to shave a little heart shape just so she would know that you'd know that she appreciated it. But anyway, the point is, we were a hairy fucking bunch back then, but no more. because now not only is there deadly diseases around, but also we've learned more about hygiene and the fact that mildew does grow faster in a humid area filled with weeds than it does in sunlight and dryness. And that's why that the folks at Manscaped have been our favorite friends here on the program over the past several months and years. Is that not correct, Brian? They've been our favorites overall because they keep us slicker than cum on a gold tooth as far as our personal grooming.
They are a great friend of the Jim Cornette experience and, of course, Jim Cornette's Drive-Thru. Absolutely.